So welcome to this next video. We are now talking about users and groups, and we'll also talk a little bit about the differences between a local and a domain user. Now, you are now logged in to here. You can see right here, we've got our login for our DSM. Now I'm logged in as the admin, and the way that I can tell that is by going to the very top right-hand corner, and I've got the little person up here, and I can actually see information about the user being admin, and I can restart, shut down, do all of that sort of stuff. But essentially I can see that I'm logged in as the admin. Now the great thing about the Synology NAS, of course, is that you can create multiple users and you can grant them specific permissions based on groups, give them access to specific folders and shares, to specific applications, and then even integrate it with a domain using something like Active Directory. So let's go into our control panel right here on our desktop. There are two areas here, users or user and group, and there's also domain and LDAP. We'll focus a lot more on the domain LDAP one on the next video. We're going to look at how to integrate our user or our Synology NAS into a domain via Active Directory. And then you can take advantage of Active Directory users and groups, and makes it a lot easier to manage your Synology NAS, especially in an enterprise, in a business environment. So from here, we're going to go into user. All right, we're going to have a look at what's going on. Of course, that's now changed. You've got user group on the left here. So we've got a few users in here. We've got admin, Edie Aguero, guest, and Plex. These are some users that we've already got created. You can see a little bit of a description about what they are. Emails are blank, and then the status, normal, disabled. So you can see that our guest account is currently disabled. You can also see advanced areas, which we'll cover in a little while, where you can actually go and actually set up some more advanced permissions and qualities and specific rules against how these users and the passwords are sort of set. So we'll cover that in a little bit. So let's just look at user from here. So obviously by default, you'll see that the system default user is admin. That's the one that we're logged in right now. I can select edit, and I can see a little bit more information about this particular user. All right, I can change this description to whatever I want. I can add an email. I can also change the password and then confirm the password right from there. All right, you've got user groups. User groups is now the group that the admin user is applied against. Now we're going to look at groups in a second, but essentially this is referring to the groups which are in the group section right here. Okay, so you'll see that it is a member, admin, which is just a user, is a member of the administrators group, which is the system default admin group, and it's ticked, right? It's also got rights to HTTP and to users, right? So those three are ticked, which means that they have access or they have rights to those three user groups. And of course, we can go and change, we can add and remove groups as we so need to. Permissions is an area where you are now allowing that user to be granted permissions to a specific folder or share on your NAS. So if I open up my file station right in here, you'll see that I've got some stuff here on the left, right? These are the shares that we've created: data, net backup, Plex, test share, and web, and they are directly related to these right here. Okay, so the data, which is where all of my data is kept, well, read-write access, great, and it's ticked. So I've got read-write access. So user admin has got read-write access to data, Plex, and test share, but not to the others in this case, right? And they are read and write, and you can see right from there. Now you can also go and change that to read only, to custom. Custom gives you a lot more changes if you so need to, all right? Quotas is one thing that we're not going to cover in this particular video, but essentially you can select quotas on how much storage that particular user can store before it fills up. So you can say a quota of 100 gig for a user. Once they reach 100 gig, then they can no longer save files, things of that nature. And then speed limit is now, this is this thing called quality of service. It's QoS. You're actually limiting the speed of particular services based on that user. So for example, if they're going to be using FTP, well, I only want them to be able to, I'm only going to allow them to upload at this particular speed or download at this particular speed. And the reason that you do that is to prioritize perhaps other services on your NAS with higher bandwidth requirements, so that if FTP is downloading a massive file, right, and this is set to unlimited, then potentially you're going to have an impact on your NAS because the FTP service being run by the admin is consuming all of the bandwidth. So you may want to go app by app in here and actually specify, well, look, I don't want my FTP. It's very important, but I don't want to consume all my bandwidth, so I can actually limit those in the speed limit section. All right, so that is the admin user right from there. Let's look at how to create a brand new user. We can just click on create, and very easily you can just set some information in here. So we can say, Harry, this is a test account. We'll leave email blank. We'll put a password in here. Send a notification mail to the newly created user. So if you input the email and your Synology NAS is set up with email to be able to send out emails, then let's say you've got a team of administrators or users that need access to the NAS. You want them to be able to log in. Well, then Harry will get an email at harry@mydomain.com. All right. And then you click on next, and then it'll actually send them a notification email saying, hey, you've now been added to this Synology NAS, and now log in, and off you go. So that's that. Well, let's just delete that. So that's what you can do. So you can tick that. You can disallow the user to change the account password. So for example, any user can reset and change their password, but you may have a rule around, no, they cannot. They're not allowed to do it. A different admin has to do that on their behalf. All right. So you could actually tick that. Click on next. Now we look at the groups. Now, what groups do you want it to be a part of? Do you want it just to be a standard user? Do you want it to have only read-only access, right? So for example, you don't want them to touch anything at all. You could just say, I want them to be read-only, all right? We can untick that. Or do you want them to be part of the administrators? Do you want them to be a full admin or not? All right, so you can tick that as well. Let's just say we want them to be an administrator. And next, here, these are the folders that we looked at, the shares. Which ones do you want them to have access to? Well, in my case, I do want them to get access to my Plex and my test server, but I don't want them to have access to data. Quotas, we'll leave that, that's fine. And what apps do you want them to get access to? Well, let's tick on these, but on a couple, we'll say deny. We don't want them to get access to that sort of stuff. We'll leave all that as default and apply. So that is now going to go and create a brand new user. Harry's now been created, great. So now let's just log out and see whether this has worked. So we can sign out of our admin and now log in as Harry. Harry's logged in. Essentially, you see that there's now a new profile essentially being set up. It looks different to what we had before because there's nothing on it. It's a brand new user. Let's look into here. So he's got access to Package Center. He's got access to Control Panel. Let's look at our main menu. Now, you'll notice that File Station is now gone. File Station is not available because we have denied access for that user to File Station. All right. So now let's just log back out and log back in as our admin. All right, back into Control Panel. That was Harry. So users, you can also just go and delete Harry if you so want to. Now the advanced area is an area where you're essentially setting some global settings for your NAS around users and passwords. There's a number of things. We're not going to go through every single thing, but you can obviously do some forgot the passwords. You know, non-administrator user can reset, force password changes, password strength rules. So for example, you do want a special character and some numerical characters in your password. You can have those ticked. What's the minimum length? Well, I may want that to be 8 instead of 6. All right. Password expiration. Well, after, let's say for admin, I want the password to expire after 60 days. So every 60 days, it will ask me to input a brand new password. You can also enable two-step verification, which is actually really nice. Essentially a second way to authenticate who that user is logging into the NAS, and also enabling this user home. So when they tick that, a user has a home drive essentially catered and created just for them. All right, so that's what the advanced section looks like. Now, the other space that we'll look at very quickly is the groups area. And here are the groups that we were talking about just before. Administrators, HTTP read-only, users, and videos. They are the 5 groups that are created on your NAS or on my NAS. And I can select one of these and actually change what these actually do. All right, but before we do that, let's just go and create one. And then we'll look at how to change it. So let's just create a brand new account here. So let's say, for example, you work in an organization and you want your help desk people, so people who are in help desk, to have different access to the administrators. They still want some permissions, but not as much as, say, an administrator of the account. Help desk admins. Now, what do you want them to have access to? Well, look, in this case, I do not want them to get access to my net backup, because that's pretty important. I don't want them to get access to Plex. anything that's sort of administrative. But I'm happy for them to have read access to my data, but they can only do read write against my test share. Next, some quotas. No, we'll leave that. That's fine. We don't need any quotas. Now here, well, what do we want them to get access to? Well, look, they need access to FileStation to be able to manage the files and actually have a look through that. We'll give them access to FTP, but there's not really too much more that I want them to get access to. So we're just going to allow for those two, and we'll leave the speed as is and apply. So that has now created a brand new group called Help Desk. All right, and there it is. And you can actually select that by going Edit. You can actually go and change what we've just set right from there. You can also go into Edit Members to actually allocate a member to that particular help desk group. Because at the moment, now when I say members, I'm talking about the users. Okay, so you see I've got 4 users. So if I go Edit Members and I say Add, here are my 4 users. So I can now allocate one of those users to that help desk group. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually go and create a new user. Again, we'll call this one Johnny and whatever, and the password. All right. So in here, I'm going to leave this blank. Okay, they're just a user by default. We're not going to do anything else other than that. And apply, and that will now create that user again. And then we're going to go and allocate that user to the group. Now, there's a couple ways you can do that. Of course, is you can go into the actual Johnny account here under User and Edit, and then go into User Groups and allocate them to Help Desk by ticking it that way. You can also go into Group, find the Help Desk, Edit Member, Add, and then add Johnny into there. And there's Johnny being added as a user against the Help Desk group. All right, and that's it, right? So that's users and groups in a nutshell, essentially. Now, the other thing that we'll cover very, very quickly, because then we'll go into a lot more detail in the next video, is around domain and LDAP. Now, of course, you can actually use your Synology NAS and get it all working and authenticated against an Active Directory environment, against a domain, Windows Server Active Directory. And that is great because then your users and groups, these become essentially local users and groups. And then you can use Active Directory users and security groups to log in and manage your Synology NAS. That's really, really nice feature. You can do LDAP searches. You can also do some SSO, which is single sign-on, if you need to as well. But we'll cover that a little bit more in the next video.